Teaching English just isn't challenging to me. It doesn't challenge me to teach past perfect or first conditional or present perfect or irregular verbs. It's just not challenging. Teaching these exams, the Cambridge exams, I know how to do it. I know them inside and out. I've prepared people for them for years. I need something new. I've heard this several times, and it can be a little disheartening when you're tired of what you're doing, but you don't know what you want to do next. We're going to talk about that today. Let's go. Hey there, English teachers. Jesse here from Sweed Academy, and I want to help you in the classroom. And whatever you want to call it, if you want to call it burnout, or you want to call it not finding a challenge, or you want to call it you need something new, whatever it is, maybe teaching English just doesn't challenge you because you're not learning anything new. You're not learning new science principles. You're not learning new math principles. You're not learning new psychology studies. Whatever you think other teachers and other subjects are learning, you're not learning this. You're dealing with your native language, right? Or if you're not a native teacher, you've probably studied these grammar points time and time and time and time again. Am I right? Well, I have an idea. I have some tricks for you if you're facing this, because it can be discouraging. Many people, let's face it, are English teachers because at first they didn't know what else they wanted to do. And maybe you've been teaching for a few years and you still don't know what you want to do, really. Maybe it doesn't call you. Maybe you're becoming bored with the English, as I talked about before, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I'll tell you how I keep it fresh and keep it. I've been doing this for about 14 years now. I'll tell you how I keep it fresh, how I keep it new, and how I continue to stimulate the curious part of my mind. And we're going to talk about that. So first, I think we need to find the challenge, right? Find the challenge. There can be challenges in almost anything that we do that's meaningful, because I'll tell you what, teaching, especially teaching kids, teaching teens, or teaching adults, it can be very deep, even if you're teaching the most basic things. And the way you can find the challenge is to focus on the people, right? Focus on the student, focus on the kids, focus on the teens, focus on your students. Where do they need to strengthen? Where do they need to improve? And work on that specifically. And it can be a challenge every time, because every one of us is different, right? We all have different needs. We all have different ways that people can reach us. Your students all have different ways that you can reach them and connect with them. So searching for this is a good way to avoid this challenge burnout when you're not necessarily teaching the subject. So you're not teaching English. Well, you are teaching English, but you're doing so much more than that. And if you realize that, it can get you going. It can recharge your batteries for this upcoming school year that's coming, or for the camp that you're working in, or for whatever your next class is, right? We want to focus on the student. We want to focus on their needs. Focus on your students' goals, and that way it's always new, because your students always have different goals. And so the first step is finding their goals and helping them find their goals. That's why I love teaching. To me, teaching is goal setting and working towards that goal. And instead of doing it for yourself, you're doing it with somebody else and for somebody else, which is immensely rewarding. So that's the first, focus on the student. Focus on what their needs are instead of focusing on your subject matter. Whether you're teaching, I'm sure any math teachers are bored of their math, of basic algebra. Basic science teachers are bored of teaching the same science experiments. The history teachers are bored because it's always the same history, unless we're rewriting history. But focus on the student and their goals. Next, I'd like to tell you, don't stick too strictly to a lesson plan. lesson plans can kill the spontaneity in a class. Of course, it's always good to have maybe a skeleton to go by, a basic structure that you can formulate your class, right? So you obviously know where you're going. Every class, you should know where you're going. You should have a main objective. You should have kind of like the lessons that I provide for you. I have normally a main objective, a secondary objective, maybe a third objective. So maybe the main objective for a certain class would be to increase speaking fluency using connectors. Then the second objective might be to learn a few new vocabulary words that I'm pretty sure they're not going to know, but they'll need them to perform the task. And then maybe a third objective might be to think more deeply about a subject or something like that, right? These are clear objectives. Every class should have a clear objective that you want your students to perform, a clear task that you want them to do, and a clear objective, as I said it before, that you want them to learn and improve in. And then basically we're working toward finding that objective and reaching that objective. That's how I kind of structure my classes, through various, whether it is 2 or 3 or 4 activities, whatever we have planned for today. So every activity should have those objectives. And then maybe you have some bullet points, but really detailed lesson plans, maybe in the beginning of your career, maybe in the beginning of your teaching time. They're obviously more important than later on. But be careful that you're not sticking too strictly to a lesson plan and losing any spontaneity in the class, because we're not teaching to lesson plans, we're teaching students, right? We're teaching real people. So if a student has a question that's not on your lesson plan, that's great, unless they're just trying to waste your time. And then that's not great. But if they're using language, if they're asking questions, even if they're interrupting, but they're doing it in English, instead of cutting that off, try sometimes to go with that and correct their language and try to improve that. Because something I found, if you correct a student who's being disruptive and you correct their language and make them repeat the correct sentence, and again, like I told you before, I like to repeat 3 times to get them in the habit of saying the sentence in the correct way. And then it kind of transforms the disruption into a lesson. And then maybe another student I found oftentimes will say something also on this new topic. So allow your classes, allow your lessons to be spontaneous a little bit, and to be a little flexible, and to be like water. One more way that you can find the challenge in the classroom, even when your subject, let's take English for example, is not challenging. Teaching English is not challenging. I mean, if you're teaching past simple and present perfect, it's not really challenging, the material, but find the challenge within yourself. Okay, what do I mean by find the challenge within yourself? I mean, work on whatever it is personally that you need to work on, whether it is better organization. You can hide this just within yourself and improve your classes in the meantime, even though secretly you're just trying to improve yourself. And in doing that, you're improving the class. If you want to improve your patience, which is a great thing if you're teaching kids or teens, right? Improving your patience, growing as a person. Another way you can find a challenge is find the thing within yourself that you want to improve, right? Find your self-improvement. And if you do this, it will always be challenging because you're always trying to find a weakness within yourself to improve. I'll give you an example from this past year. I went to a school that I had heard rough things about. Not really rough. It wasn't a terrible school, but it definitely was lacking in discipline and lacking in respect from the students, right? And I had some friends that actually, they stop teaching after teaching at the school? Well, I'm just the type of person, when you tell me that there's a fire over there and they can't do this because it's so bad, I have to just find out for myself. I have to feel that fire for myself. So I applied and found a way to teach in that school. And I did it partly as my own personal challenge to myself to see for one, how bad this place was. And it wasn't as bad as they made it seem, but they were in a different part of it too. And for my own personal challenge, just to grow as a person, to work on my own patience, to work on handling myself in difficult situations. These are all personal challenges you can do with yourself as you're preparing your classes and as you're giving your lessons. So you don't have to focus on the challenge in the material. Focus on the challenges for yourself outside of the material and use these in your lessons. And I think that you will have a much more enjoyable experience and you'll have the pleasure of growing as a person. And that is always a beautiful thing, isn't it? So, do you have any ideas? Do you have any ideas to help people who may be suffering burnout, aren't challenged by their material they're teaching, or any other suggestions in the classroom? Let us know down below. And any good ones I'll share in the next video. But if you like this video and you like videos like this, then click that subscribe button and the bell so you can be notified next time I upload a video. I try to get 2 a week. Right now, it's like 1.5 a week. So I'm going to be more disciplined in doing that, especially if I find that you like it. So let me know there. Keep teaching and keep learning. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.